From the Western Mass News studios in Springfield, this is Western Mass News Getting Answers with Dave Mattson.
Thanks for joining me for this week's edition of Western Mass News Getting Answers. As you know by now, every week I'm joined by political and business leaders and other newsmakers to talk about the issues that impact you. This week, we're getting answers from Bruce Stebbins and Norris Camargo, commissioners on the state's Cannabis Control Commission. Both were appointed to the commission in January. Bruce Stebbins, the only person to serve on two commissions. Before the CCC, he served on the Gaming Commission. We'll get to the questions in a minute, but the recreational use of marijuana has been legal in Massachusetts for nearly 5 years now. Voters approving the change in 2016. The following year, the Cannabis Control Commission was formed to apply and administer the laws enabling access to marijuana. Now it's a better than billion-dollar industry in the state. Since its inception, the Cannabis Control Commission has birthed an industry, approving some 900 license applications for retailers, cultivators, testing labs, and others. This morning, we're going to focus on the role of the Cannabis Control Commission, the growth of the cannabis industry in Massachusetts in the last 5 years, and where the commissioners see the industry and the Control Commission about 5 years from now. Bruce and Norris, thanks for traveling west to be here with us today. It's good to see you.
Great to see you as well, Dave.
Norris, let me direct my first question to you. Many viewers don't really know a lot about the Cannabis Control Commission. They know it exists, but what exactly is its role?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. The CCC's mission is to honor the will of the voters of Massachusetts. If you recall, a few years ago, folks voted to legalize marijuana in Massachusetts, and we are regulators. The commission's job is to work on compliance, to regulate, to approve, disapprove licenses, to review applications, change of ownerships, but also to keep an eye towards public safety and public health. Also develop policies and procedures that encourage those who have been mostly disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs and cannabis prohibition are just some of the things that we regulate and comply with.
Bruce, I think at the beginning of all this, when the talk about legalizing marijuana and then voters approved it, there were fears that came with legalizing marijuana. And have any of those, have you seen come to fruition here in the state?
Well, it's a great question. Obviously, when the ballot question passed, there were votes in opposition to legalizing cannabis for adult use. I think our job as the commission is to continue to roll out the policies and regulations to demonstrate that this new industry is safe, it's well regulated, and hopefully allays some of the fears that people had about the introduction of this new industry. I think there are signs that the industry is not impacting communities as much as might have been anticipated. Certainly, it's great to be well prepared, but we're seeing communities like Northampton and Lee, which have decided not to institute or roll back their impact fee because they're just not seeing any negative impact within their community. On the flip side, I think we've seen some positives. We've seen a number of businesses start up, especially out here in Western Mass. I always like to point to the city of Holyoke, where some buildings that have long sat dormant are being re-energized and reused for cultivation and production. A number of local jobs are being created. So we're mindful and always keeping an eye towards potential harms, but at the same time, I think there are some positive signs. And there's also some positive activity that is taking place because of these businesses starting up across the state.
Also one of those industries that seem to be able to weather the everything that happened with COVID, for sure. Bruce, let me ask you too, who can apply for a cannabis business license, and how many different categories are there? I know there's a few.
Sure, we encourage everybody to apply, and certainly folks who, as Commissioner Camargo has pointed out, were disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. So we are really opening it up. We're running a social equity program to give folks the opportunity to get into this new industry. As you pointed out, it's a $2 billion industry. $1 billion of those sales have been reached just in this year alone. But there are a number of license types. There's cultivation, both indoor and outdoor. We have delivery options or licenses that are available. Retail, which is obviously one of the most popular license categories, but we also have some that are tailored specifically for Massachusetts residents. Those would be our micro business as well as our cooperative license.
Notice, let's talk about who decides how many cannabis retailers or growers a community can have.
Yeah, so, part of the mandate was that the CCC does not have a cap limit on the licenses, but the cities and towns, the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts decide that.
On the other part of this too is when you look at everything in these tough economic times. I mean, everything that happened with COVID, this has been a real shot in the arm for these communities who need money now more than ever. It seems like one other aspect of it. But Norris, I'd like to also address impact fees. Not too long ago, and we touched on this a little bit, it came to light that the city of Haverhill is charging more than $1.3 million in impact fees to the 3 cannabis companies operating within its city limits. That's reopened the debate over the true impact of cannabis businesses on local communities. The Cannabis Control Commission chair said he doesn't buy the need for exorbitant impact fees. So right now, what authority does the commission have over the fees that communities charge?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The mandate does not provide express authority to the commission to review the host community agreements. The host community agreements are completely controlled by every city and town in Massachusetts. They decide their process. They decide who receives a license at a local level and who decides who gets a host community agreement. The statute doesn't currently prohibit municipalities from charging fees authorized under state law, in addition to the 3% community impact fee. State agencies may not enact regulations that conflict with governing statutes. So it's really up to the local municipalities.
So up to them, obviously with the oversight of the Cannabis Control Commission.
Absolutely.
Yeah, at all times.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We are going to take a break right now. And when we come back, even more to talk about. We're going to talk about the Cannabis Control Commission's social equity program. We did touch on that. And the effort for cannabis delivery. So stay with us. Welcome back to Western Mass News Getting Answers. My guests this week are Bruce Stebbins and Norris Camargo, commissioners on the state's Cannabis Control Commission. We touched on this in the last segment, the social equity program. The Cannabis Control Commission established that to encourage participation in the marijuana industry by people from communities that have been disproportionately harmed by marijuana prohibition and enforcement, and to positively impact these communities. Let's talk about the commission meeting its goals when it comes to social equity. Norris, why don't you address this first, then Bruce?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to give the viewers a little insight on the social equity mandate. And we were one of the first states in the country to mandate an equity mandate, throughout the commission, not just in our licensees, but we also believe it within our staff and our recruitment and our leadership of the CCC. So the social equity program, like I said earlier, is in response to the state law. It is one-of-a-kind program throughout the country. We were the first program. It is a free technical assistance program. It has 4 different components to it, and we can talk about it a little bit later. It allows for expedited review of licenses. It gives you access to social consumption, delivery license. This program was tailored specifically for folks that have been disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs, but also folks who may have been arrested or incarcerated, or one of their family members, parent or spouse has been in prison. It is one of the ways that here in Massachusetts, we ensure that we are having meaningful participation when it comes to equity, and that we are providing access and opportunities to folks that may not have an opportunity to be part of the cannabis industry, otherwise.
So this is sort of like evening the playing field?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Bruce, let's talk more about this as far as the progress being made with this. I mean, is it something that's hard to monitor? Is it something that kind of monitors itself, or?
It really gives us an opportunity. We have 4 tracks within our social equity program. If you're interested in being the entrepreneur, if you're interested in just getting an entry-level position in this new industry, or if you're looking to become an executive in this new industry, that free training is available. Additionally, we have an ancillary track. So all these cannabis businesses need key services. So it might be HVAC, it might be plumbing, it might be electrical work. So the ancillary track allows somebody who may not want to touch a flower or touch the cannabis product, but wants to be involved in this new industry. It gives them a chance to figure out how their business can serve the cannabis industry. But we're currently in the application round for our 3rd cohort. We've had well over a few hundred people go through our first cohort. We can track them on the other side by seeing if they apply for a license or if they get a job. And as Commissioner Camargo said, we expedite their license just by virtue of them being in the program.
So this is one of those things, I mean, obviously, you can't go into, if you're thinking about going into the marijuana business, you don't go into this blindly. That there's a process for doing this, and this basically, through the process, kind of holds their hand to make sure that they're, dotting the I's and crossing their T's.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Dave, and if I can add, the social equity program, we just extended the application deadline to November 15th. And I want to encourage folks out in Western Mass, if they have questions, if they're interested in learning anything around cannabis, they should go to our website. I think you guys may have it. You can, Google Cannabis Control Commission equity programs. But it's free, it's online, it's hands-on skills. The courses have been catered to folks who are just either starting a business in cannabis or want to understand a little bit more about cannabis. It's very, it's a basic but very comprehensive curriculum. And I also want to encourage folks, like Commissioner Stebbins said, folks who may be in the ancillary services. So, folks who have small cleaning companies or HVAC companies, IT companies, marketing, everything that you can think of a small business does to support a larger business. There is space for you in this industry. And what I like to say is the non-plant touching opportunities that this industry does have. And I will say, the social equity program was developed really to make sure that we hit those diversity targets. And, we encourage, folks of color, veterans, women, LGBTQ, folks that are, within these populations to really think about applying and being part of the social equity program.
It's something you don't think about, these ancillary industries, like the cleaning businesses and plumbers and electricians and things like that. The total impact, as you look at it, on a community as a whole, and how it spurs not just the economy for the marijuana industry, but for other industries as well. I think it's something we just don't think about that often.
That's right. And we just published our regulations in Spanish and in Portuguese. So our regulations are very long, very comprehensive, but it's really nice that we now have them in 2 different languages, and we're going to continue to translate them in other languages. So folks who have not been part of this process and those who have been mostly impacted by the war on drugs can participate in this program and participate in the industry for that matter.
Bruce, the commission approved the first cannabis delivery license back in May. How's that going, and where do things stand on expansion of that right now?
I think we've been excited about the results so far. Right now we have 4 delivery couriers that are licensed in Massachusetts. We also have 1 micro business, Freshly Baked, which is down in Taunton, Massachusetts. They also have an ability to deliver product as well. This really was a great effort by our predecessors on the commission to institute regulations for delivery, as well as make those license categories right now available to a lot of the social equity applicants. Additionally, we also have created a marijuana delivery operator license, which allows someone to buy product, warehouse it, and then deliver it and sell it directly to consumers. So I think we've had our first delivery operator go through the first stage of licensing. So we're excited when that first license gets, the final license gets approved and they can start business. And that we've carved out a window for a lot of these social equity applicants to, again, kind of get a foothold in the delivery side of the business. And we've been encouraged by the results so far.
Mm-hmm. This seems like, again, you talk about these ancillary businesses. I think when we were talking about legalizing marijuana and when it finally was, that wasn't one of the things you thought about. I mean, are there concerns with this too, that, or is there, it sounds like there's the same type of control over this as there is as far as regulating the industry as a whole.
Yeah, one good thing about it, if you're an ancillary business, you do not need a license from the Cannabis Commission. You know, it's people who, again, want to do those supportive services, but you don't need a license through us. If you're touching the plant, if you're cultivating the plant, manufacturing the plant, selling the plant, then you do need to come through the Cannabis Commission for a license.
All right, we're going to take another break. And when we come back, we're going to find out where the commissioners see the control board and the cannabis industry in Massachusetts in the next 5 years, and many other things. So stay with us. Welcome back to Western Mass News Getting Answers. I'm pleased to be joined this week by Bruce Stebbins and Norris Camargo, the commissioners on the state's Cannabis Control Commission, 2 commissioners on that board. Norris, we've come a long way in 5 years. Where do you see the Cannabis Control Commission and the state of the cannabis industry in Massachusetts, say maybe 5 years from now?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, one thing I want to tell viewers, I think folks always ask us about these jobs or appointment. Our appointment is actually 5 years. I've been here now 11 months, so I'm hoping in the next 4 years, 4.5 years, that the industry, but particularly for the state of Massachusetts, that we had adopted or have adopted a social equity fund at the state level. And what does that mean very quickly and basically is that we have a lot of social equity applicants and licensees who are out here trying to create their businesses and start up their businesses, but they lack funding and there's a lot of barriers to host community agreements, and the legislators are currently working on figuring out how to create a social equity fund that allows either the industry to sort of put some funds in it, or state government, you know, whether from tax revenues or from outside money, to sort of create a fund that will allow these folks. So I hope that in the next 4 to 5 years, while I'm sitting here as a commissioner, that we have developed that social equity fund, and that some of the cities have also created their own equity mandates. There's a huge barrier and challenges at the local level, and I hope to see more city and municipality sort of involvement and equity mandates. In terms of safety and public health, you know, I hope that we continue to make sure that, you know, this is one of the safest states to grow, sell, and use cannabis, first for medical, but also for recreational, and that we've continued to value the equity mandate that the statute has mandated the CCC and the industry.
You know, one of the things in many communities when marijuana was first approved decided, no, we're not going to have anything to do with this. We're going to let maybe the bigger communities do it or whatever else. Do you see as these towns who initially, or the cities or towns who initially said, we don't want to get involved in this, as they see the success in other communities, that will help expand everything statewide?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, you know, the stigma is still there. I think if folks want to learn more about marijuana, what does it mean? There's a website that we have created under our public awareness campaign a few years ago, and it's called moreaboutamj.org. So moreaboutamj.org. But I think that cities and towns are going to look back in a few years and say, we might have missed a boat, or, you know, how do we now work with the community, work with local businesses, work with, you know, the state, local officials, and the CCC to think about what does that look like in their towns. And I think there's a lot of towns that are no towns, and there's still an opportunity at some point when they're ready. And if they're not, it's okay too. But I think that you'll see more, I think, towns coming on in the future.
You know, one of the things I think many people look at, for example, here in Western Massachusetts, the city of Springfield was really slow to open up their first retail marijuana business. But you look at a community like East Hampton, I think there's 4, 5, or 6, and a couple growers up there. Is there a worry that many of these smaller retailers might not be able to make it with tougher competition? Because again, we're seeing smaller businesses, and you're also seeing larger companies involved. Bruce, is this something that, you know, just may play out on its own over the next few years, you think?
Well, this will be interesting to watch, and obviously we're mindful of, you know, what other neighboring states are doing in, you know, legalizing the use of adult cannabis for adult use. I think, you know, you are seeing a number of towns, as you mentioned, East Hampton, Northampton, Holyoke, others are embracing in this industry, going through the host community agreement process. I think the fact that the cannabis statute limited the number of licenses an individual can have control over really helps open it up for those small business owners. And some of the small business owners I met are already thinking about expansion. They're already thinking about getting into the cultivation if they've been on the retail side. Right now here in the Pioneer Valley, we have 17 marijuana establishments that have gotten their license to commence operation, 25 up in Hampshire County, 8, I think, up in Franklin County. So you still see the growth of the industry at this early stage. And I think, you know, right now we have over 300 licensed to commence operation businesses across Massachusetts. That's not quite one for every community. So. As we've talked about, there's still room to grow, and I think communities will look at this as they see what's happening in other neighboring cities and towns and see what the investment has meant for their community. So we're hoping that we create, in 5 years, we look back and realize we have full participation in this new industry, and that it's a robust industry and still a compliant industry with the regulations.
You know, when the first retail marijuana shops opened up, there was a novelty to this, and one of the things as we look ahead to 5 years that, and it seems to even be becoming this right now, that all right, well, it's just another business opening up in our community.
I think that's the sense most people are feeling, a little more comfortable with it. But I also think the industry itself is still being innovative. They're trying new products, putting more different products on the market to appeal to their customers. And we're still also seeing a healthy participation in the medical side, you know, patients seeking this through their doctors. So I think the growth is still there. The business and job opportunities are still there as long as you have a commission that has a strong regulatory authority over this industry.
Bruce, I should note too, you are from Western Massachusetts. You and I go back a long way, so over 30 years now, when we were working together on Make-A-Wish. Some good times. We were reminiscing before we started taping.
It was a great organization. It was a lot of fun back in those days. And, you know, look how young we were, obviously, at that point.
Everything about us, but we did have fun. For sure. Listen, I want to thank both of you, Cannabis Control Commissioners Bruce Stebbins and Norris Camargo, for joining me this week. It's good to see you. Thank you for making the trip out here. Enjoy your time back here. Bruce, I'm sure you've got business you can take care of while you're out here too, right?
We are off to have a brief visit with Mayor Sarno, and then we are stopping up in Holyoke to see the first minority women-owned independent testing lab, which has just opened its doors. So. We're seeing what the industry is meaning out here in Western Mass.
That's good. Well, thank you again for joining me this week. I'm Dave Mattson. Hope you stay safe, stay well, and if you can, join us next week for Western Mass News Getting Answers.